if you think about what will be valuable for a buyer, there's once you open your mind to that, then you get all sorts of new ideas, and you want to work on those as opposed to just chasing your next customer.
So welcome to the business behind your business. Today we're laser focused. We're going to narrow in on not profit, not revenue, but what we're going to narrow down and focus on today is a real game changer, and that is building wealth. And we're all interested in it, but we often don't target it. We don't be specific about it. We don't plan for it. We're focused so much on revenue, but we're forgetting perhaps one of the most important things we should be focused on, and that is building wealth. Now, today we're joined by Stephanie Hayes, who's a business and exit strategist, helping entrepreneurs shift away from that hustle of being focused on revenue and driving revenue to actually thinking about legacy and how they actually do that. Now, when we think of exit planning, and there's a temptation to turn off if you're a small or medium business owner, because you might be thinking exit planning is only for the big companies, the Silicon Valleys, the unicorns, the big startups, but that's, or the other end, the retirement age founders. That's not the case. We're going to unpack, and with Stephanie's help, she's going to help us see why every business owner needs to have an exit strategy and why that is essential for building your growth plan. So we're quite fortunate because Stephanie is the founder of Assets to Exits, and we're going to unpack a bit more about that. But it's a strategic pathway for established business owners to move from just focused on revenue to wealth. She's been doing this for over 25 years, experience working with solo businesses, small business owners, creating asset-based business models, building long-term value. She's also an acquisition entrepreneur. She walks the walk. She doesn't just talk, she does it. She's a software company founder. She's also the host of the Real People, Real Business podcast, and has a mission to help business owners create financially rewarding finales, okay, whether that's through a full or partial exit, or just having the freedom and leverage to do the things in life that really matter. Stephanie, welcome to the business behind your business.
Thank you so much. I think I'm going to get you to write my bio after this.
Look, I love talking about this topic. It's a passion of mine, but it's also a passion of yours. So often we see the business owner just hustling to try and draw more sales, more revenue, more profit, but it's very short-term focused. There's something that we're missing in that. And I mentioned growing assets, but why is that important to have that longer-term focus at any stage of your business?
Because it helps you make decisions that aren't short term, right? So what ends up happening is I think a lot of small business owners don't even know that this is an option for them, right? So when a lot of business owners think, oh, well, an exit is for a Silicon Valley VC funded, whatever, business like that. But I've bought businesses for $500. I mean, there's a market for pretty much any type of business. And so when business owners sort of figure out that this is even an option for them, then the next step is for them to realize that when they start to think about assets instead of just revenue, just income, they realize that there's a whole other strategy for them, and it gives them this sense of longevity, right? Which I feel like a lot of business owners who are at least in service-based businesses, they just feel like they're doing whatever they're doing right now, and then when they decide to stop, they're done. But actually, in the process of building their business, they've created a lot of value inside their businesses that they don't even realize exists. And so when we pull that out and we start to demonstrate how they've actually created something that someone might buy, then it starts to get the wheels turning, where they're thinking, well, why am I spending all of my time just chasing the next client and the next customer? That's where this sort of burnout comes from. I think burnout is not just about, oh, I've worked too hard. I think burnout is, I don't see the future. I feel like I'm not going anywhere. I'm not building anything. And oftentimes when we start having that conversation and we start envisioning what the future might look like, people have this renewed sense of energy, and especially when we're changing their roles in their business. So this longer term focus and this understanding of what the full life cycle is of your business completely changes the decisions you're making now, from, very short-term goals to, something that I'm working towards. It feels really good to know that you're building something, right? That you're not just trying to make ends meet.
Absolutely. Do you think that we've put too narrow a definition on the term of a business exit? Because we mentioned that we're focusing on business, like big business. I have this saying, and it's a bit morbid, but it used to be two things in life were certain: death and taxes. And I'd like to add a third thing to that, which is death, taxes, and business owners exiting their business. So it's going to happen whether you choose or not. So if you can maximize the value,
Yeah.
then that's a great thing.
There's a lot of different types of exits you can take, you can orchestrate as well. And that's why I think it's so important for this education to happen with small business owners, because they don't just have to sell, right? They can make an operational exit, which is what a lot of people actually end up doing. I have a couple of clients right now who are like, this is typical. So our clients will come to us and they'll say, I need to sell my business. And when you start to peel back the layers and you start to ask why, oftentimes it's because they just can't see the future and they don't know what their options are. But actually, a lot of them are pretty in love with their businesses if it could feel a little different for them. So we often have people come to us saying, I want to sell. And then what they end up doing is actually redesigning their business model. And that's my background. I'm a business architect. I'm a organizational designer in the corporate world. Like, I build operating models, I build business models. So oftentimes that's the work that we do. And then the business owner is like, actually, I don't think I want to sell. I think I just want to take myself out of what I was doing before and figure out a way that I can do something different. And then some of them are like, yeah, maybe I don't need to sell right now. If I could, I could definitely see myself putting another 3 to 5 years into this business if there was a plan or if there was something I was working towards. You can do all sorts of types of exits. You can, you have like a legacy exit. You could do an employee buyout. You could do there's all sorts of creative ways to end the business rather than just kind of sitting down one day and going, I'm just done. I shut it all down, right? And I've seen that happen. I just think it's so unfortunate because even if you don't realize it, right now, you have assets inside your business. When I talk about assets, I mean something that someone would pay you money for. And so the goal that I have with my clients is to figure out what those are and figure out what their strategy looks like. Of course, we're not going to stop selling things and we're not going to get rid of revenue. We want to grow that. We want to grow profitability, but we also want to build something that has long-term value, that makes the business more valuable when it comes to an exit or to sell the business. Sometimes for people, they have no intention of ever exiting, but they like this thinking because it makes them focus on different things inside their business. It makes them see how valuable it is to build that software product as opposed to, putting more and more, engineering projects on your services side of your business or whatever it might be.
Mm. There's a quote that you're recorded for saying quite regularly, is that when you build with exit in mind, you make better decisions today. Can you explain why that's the case?
So I just had a sales call with a couple of ladies who run a business that has been valued around $10 million. And when we started talking about, the work that they need done, and it was so clear to me what they need done. Like, it's time now for them to take their 10-year-old business model and it's just not working for them. And they know it's not working for them. And it used to make them a lot more money, and now it's not making them nearly as much money. And yet, when we talk about, creating that structure inside the business and looking at everything as a whole and as a system, and I'm not talking about something, big and heavy and long and drawn out, but why put good money after bad when you could fix the foundation? But they didn't that didn't resonate with them. Like, they still want to just go and buy another marketing strategy, and they want to put the Band-Aid on their sales hole. And to me, it got me really thinking this last week, because you could tell that they were coming from this place of fear and they just want to put more and more money into marketing, right? And I look at that and I'm thinking, what a waste, right? What a waste, because you're just putting, Band-Aids over something that's broken. And so when we get into that real short-term thinking, we're building a Franken business, right? We've got one arm that we got over here and another arm we got over there and a leg we got down here and a foot we got over there. And it's kind of like limping along and it's not aligned and it doesn't work. And so if you want that long-term result of, better profitability, growth in your revenue, you've got to get all these pieces aligned and you've got to clean up what's in the back end of the business. But people who don't think that way, I also, part of that conversation too, which is like they're not even there yet, which is what are we investing in the business and what are we building that's going to have a much bigger long-term value for them than, increasing revenue or getting your sales back to where you want it to be. Didn't even have that conversation because they just weren't ready for it. So it's like shooting yourself in the foot. You can't walk any further because you've got a hole in your foot now. So those folks who haven't gotten there yet, who are not thinking about the assets and thinking about what they can make in their business as an investment, they're going to stay small, right? They're going to have a ceiling to their growth.
So by thinking about that long term, about the assets that you can create, it changes your mindset about how you're approaching the day to day. And I guess you're making better decisions. You're making longer term decisions. You're looking to grow the long term. And you mentioned about the owners that came to you, and after you've worked with them to help design or get their business ready for a sale, they've actually, coin a phrase, fallen back in love with what they do and they've wanted to keep working in it. But why is it that when we create a business that's ready for somebody else to buy, it's actually better for us?
Well, exactly for that reason, right? In fact, I just had this conversation like 2 hours ago. One of the first clients I worked with when I started, when I kind of pivoted to doing all of this exit stuff, she was like 3 years tops. And then I'm done, I'm selling. And her energy was just like, bleh, in this business. And so we built this whole growth strategy based on her valuation. And she had a real opportunity to like basically double her current valuation. And but we had to, we derived that from risk adjustments and that sort of thing. And I had to also create strategies that were also in line with what she actually wanted to do. Because some of the things she was like, I don't even care if that's going to grow my valuation. I'm never doing it. So that's fine. Now, what she ended up doing is really funny because like we were on our path with our growth strategy. And then she just weirdly out of the blue came up with this other idea that she wanted to do high ticket sales and completely change the way that she actually sold and what she was offering, which was like out of left field, but not what we had planned on. But she pursued that. She just reached out to me today and she was like, this has been a miracle. Like, I brought in this team and they did this thing and they built all this piece of our business and the sales machine of our business. And all of a sudden I'm selling $4,800 programs where I was selling, $1,800 before. And she's like, yeah, it's fantastic. And I said, are you still thinking about an exit? And she's like, honestly, I don't know anymore. Like she was so intent on selling before. And now she's like, I really like this. This is working for me and it's great. So what that speaks to is where the motivation for selling comes from. For some people, it's really about wanting to leave a legacy and wanting to, have the end of that lifespan. But when you can make the business far more enjoyable and attractive for the business owner, they do want to stay. Same thing happened with another client. Like we're taking her into a new role in her business. She's like, yeah, actually, I kind of don't want to sell this. I'd like to do an operational exit, but an operational exit into a totally different new line of work that still supports the business. And I'm like, great. You like, or maybe I'll buy your business, right? So, we're starting up a private equity fund right now. And part of the potential strategy is that these clients we're working with, we actually end up buying their business and operating it. So, it's a pretty interesting little flywheel, right?
Absolutely. So I'm just thinking there that we're talking about businesses that have come to you after a number of years looking to sell because for whatever reason, and a lot of the ones you've described, it's been a grind. They want to get out. yeah, I just want to get out. Let's make it happen. But then you've transformed, their way of approaching the business, because you've transformed the business itself. It's a lot more fun. It's a lot more profitable. That's exciting. They don't want to leave. There was the question then is, when should we start thinking about an exit for our business? What's the best time for any business owner to really start thinking about their exit strategy?
Well, if I'm being really academic about this, I would say like the minute you start, right? because I want to save you all of the crazy decisions you're going to make in that first kind of couple of years. But I also recognize that those crazy decisions you make in those first couple of years are actually really good for you, and they're really great learning. And I think you don't know what you don't know when you first start. I would say the optimal time to start thinking about your exit strategy is, 5, 6, 7 years in, because you have enough experience. You've probably stabilized, and you're probably starting to have that "what's next" kind of feeling. Um, and so you want to start thinking about your exit long before you have to make it, because if you come to me, say, Stephanie, I need to sell my business in the next 6 months, there's very little room for us to make much change in terms of your valuation. So if you give yourself 3, 4, 5 years to it, like, this stuff takes time, right? We typically work with our clients over a 12-month period to just implement the changes that we've designed into their growth strategy. And that's just real, right? Like, this stuff takes time, and shifting a boat that's on course is it's not an easy thing. So we're just going into a 90-day new engagement with a client, and all we're doing in that 90 days is just getting her prepared for us to come in and now work with her team and start building the growth strategy. So people don't think about how long this stuff takes. So giving it 3 to 5 years, I think, gives you at least a chance to make some impact on terms of your valuation, if you're smart about thinking about what you're investing in, and that those are assets that when I talk about assets, I mean anything that is of interest to a buyer, right? What would a buyer buy? And we try to align our plans around those.
Mm. And look, you just touched on it there, talking about assets that might be of interest to a buyer. And this is where I think we started talking about service-based businesses are saying, well, actually, I don't have anything that somebody would buy. And I'm guessing that if we looked critically at a service-based business, there are actually
Oh, yeah.
intellectual property or other assets that might be there that have got a value.
There's a lot that you can build inside of your business that can become something of value to a buyer. And there's a chance that you already have a lot of this stuff in your business already. Like, if you have a community or a membership or anything like that, any list of committed subscribers, that's an asset. The business that I bought, I basically purely paid for a list, right? For an audience, and of course the content, and some of the stuff that had been built, which I had worked on building already. But you can also, a product, of course, is an asset. An event is an asset, really, right? So let's say you've built an event, and you've created an event that you run every year, and it's grown in membership, and you've got a lot of stuff behind it and planning and whatever. That's an asset. You could sell that. Content you've created for marketing inside of your business, you pile that up and put it in some sort of accessible and curated fashion. That can be really, really valuable to other people in your industry, to your clients. Partnerships that you have, strategic partnerships that you have, those are valued on a valuation. IP that you've created that you don't even realize you've created. One of the most important strategies that I see with folks who are starting to have this asset conversation is that there's a real opportunity for them to create IP for their own industry and sort of white label that. Like, there's a whole other interesting kind of white label phenomenon that nobody thinks about, right? And they usually have tons and tons of stuff they've already created. I'm probably not getting to all 9 of them, but there's, investments that you make inside your business, and so there's lots if you come back to what would be valuable systems and operations, anything like that, if you think about what will be valuable for a buyer, there's once you open your mind to that, then you get all sorts of new ideas, and you wanna work on those as opposed to just chasing your next customer.
So there's a bit of a change there to actually identifying what those assets are. And the guide that you've created is a great place to start. So 9 types of assets, and we'll share the link to that in the show notes. But so identifying those assets, but I think once you've identified them, then you can, I guess, work on building them into a more saleable or recognizable format that somebody can look at and say, hey, that's got value to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've seen some of my business owners who are perfectly happy to just continue to run their lifestyle businesses that still get a lot of value out of this mindset because they're like, "Huh, I didn't realize that I could actually build this whole other strategy inside my business that's asset focused. And now I've got something that I'm seeing, become much more valuable in the market and gives me almost a project to work on, you know what I mean? And that feels really good for them."
Mm. I guess in a way, one option there is if you've developed these assets and they're independently recognized and got value, you may be able to actually sell an asset and still retain the rest of your business.
Yep. The business that I bought was actually an asset sale. So I bought the assets of the business as opposed to the entire entity. So yes, you can just continually build things that you can sell off to your to buyers, right? I mean, you can build a whole business model on that, right?
Absolutely. Sounds very common, or not so much a common business strategy, but I think we've talked about this before recently. Is that something that you do?
Well, maybe.
Maybe.
But I have
So
five businesses right now.
five businesses,
So,
yeah, yeah. So as we said at the beginning, you walk the walk. You don't just tell people how to do it; you actually do it yourself, and you're learning from that, and you're sharing that experience. And I think that makes it really, I guess, tangible. The advice that you're seeing somebody that's got the experience doing it, and that you've shared a lot of that concept with them as a starting point, but helping them work through that whole process. Because like as a business owner, when you identify that you've got these things that you need to do or you want to do, a lot of time you don't have the bandwidth or the resources or the experience to actually do it yourself. And that's where working with with Stephanie would be a great way to actually help, I guess, unlock the value of those assets that are hidden in your business.
yep, that is sort of like typically people will come to us and say, I need to fix something. And so that, the first phase of our work will typically be about realignment, fixing, getting the cash injection in, whatever it is. But then we turn to what's a longer term and a more sustainable business model for you, and what's the right combination of income versus asset building. And also, this is why we start with evaluation and we do the risk assessment, because then I can see, well, your growth strategy needs to include diversifying your revenue channels, because right now you're getting all your income from one channel. And so a buyer is going to be much more interested in a business that has more diversification, or maybe it's diversification of clients, or maybe it's, the addition of new offers, or maybe it's building partnerships or something more sustainable, getting away from just ad strategy. Like, it takes somebody looking at your valuation and doing your valuation to sort of pull those things out and figure out what belongs on your growth strategy that's going to contribute to either fixing a hole in your valuation or building upon something that can grow, right?
Mm. Yeah, that sounds great. Look, so I think we're looking at we we've got opportunities in our business. They're probably things that are staring us in the face that we're just ignoring, or we don't know where to start looking for them. Um, we do need to move away from this mindset of chasing revenue, chasing the next sale, and actually thinking about our long-term strategy. Um, we've got the 9 types of assets guide, which Stephanie's got which is available for our listeners. And the links will be in the show notes. They'll also be on the website, the businessbehindyourbusiness.com website, as all our previous notes are. But start there, but also go to stephaniehayes.biz and get in contact with Stephanie to see how she can help you unlock those assets. But and I think that's the starting point, to make contact, to find out what can be done. And as Stephanie said, start with that valuation, start with an understanding of where you're at right now. And maybe when you find out where you're at right now, it might prompt you into a bit more urgency about building something in the long term, because you might get a bit of a reality check when you see what the real value is. I've had that conversation a few times with mixed results, mixed reactions. But look, I think, Stephanie, so you shared a lot of great advice about where to start looking, and also some options for how we can, I guess, transform our business by focusing more on how we could exit or how we could unlock the potential of sales. If there was one thing that we should start with as a business owner to try and move from just chasing growth to actually building a legacy asset or something that's got real value, what would that one thing be?
Well, first of all, just know that it's possible, right? Because I think that that's the biggest gap for people, is that they don't realize that it's a possibility for them. So once you can believe that that's true for yourself, then you start to get really curious. Educate yourself around what assets are. Educate yourself around what's considered valuable to a buyer, and start there, because that can give you a lot of inspiration. That's why I created that guide, because it can give you some inspiration to think about either something you already have or something you'd really like to build, something that makes a lot of sense for you. I'll tell you, it's not just that when you do this assessment, you get scared and figure, oh my gosh, I've got to do something. I think it's the opposite. I think what I see more is that people do this assessment and they start to get a lot of energy. They start to see possibility that they didn't see before. And I think that's where the energy comes from. And that's that first sort of kick in the direction. And, I've got people in my Assets to Access program that have been there for they've been with me for years, and they just love the mindset, and it changes everything that they do on an ongoing basis. So I just really think this whole conversation sort of lights people up.
So it is possible. It's not just for the big end of town. Every business owner can tap into that value and exit their business with some great value. Or maybe you create value and fall back in love with your business, as Stephanie shared with us, and the opportunities are there. It's an exciting time. We do have a lot available to us. We've got some great resources that Stephanie shared. Great conversation. And it is possible. Get started, make contact, download the 9 Types of Assets guide, and have a look at how you can start unlocking the value in your business today. So, Stephanie, I've enjoyed our conversation. I know our listeners have. They've got a lot of great value out of it. And I think there's so much more that we can do for business owners to help them create value, create businesses they love, and create great legacies for their business. So thank you for joining us on The Business Behind Your Business.
Yeah, and thanks for having me.